You step out of your house on a summer morning, into a normal street in a normal city, and you start to dance. There's no music, nobody asked you to, you just start. And here's the part that matters: you will not stop for the next 6 days. This is a real woman. History remembers her only as Frau Troffea, and in July of 1518, in the city of Strasbourg, she walked into the street and began to dance like her life depended on it. It didn't. That was sort of the problem. Day 1, people laughed. By day 3, they stopped laughing. She danced through the afternoon, collapsed, slept a few hours, and got back up to do it again. Her feet were bleeding, and she kept going. Now, if this were just one strange woman, it'd be a weird little footnote, a medieval Tuesday. But it wasn't one woman, because people were watching. And watching, it turns out, was contagious. Within a week, 34 other people had joined her. Not for fun, not out of politeness. They were dancing the same desperate way, like their bodies had been hijacked and nobody left a note. Within a month, by the records of the time, as many as 400. This is the dancing plague of 1518, and every explanation you're reaching for right now is almost completely wrong. To get why this happened, you have to understand what Strasbourg was in 1518. On paper, a rich, free city of the Holy Roman Empire. In reality, a place quietly falling apart. The year before, the harvest failed. Bread got expensive fast. And when bread gets expensive in 1517, you don't diet, you starve. Then, because the universe has a sense of humor, disease showed up too. Smallpox, fevers, syphilis, a terrifying new arrival Europe had known for about 20 years and understood for roughly none of them. Orphans in the streets, families drowning in debt, everyone hungry, scared, and looking for someone to blame. And when medieval people were scared, they didn't reach for a doctor. They reached for God. Or, more useful for our story, a curse. Meet Saint Vitus. The belief went like this: make Saint Vitus angry and he'll strike you down with an uncontrollable, compulsive dance. Yes, that was a specific fear people actually had. Hold on to it. It matters more than it should. So when Frau Troffea started dancing, nobody thought medical mystery. They thought, the curse is here. In a city already convinced it was being punished. And that's when the city made a decision that turned a tragedy into a catastrophe. As the dancers multiplied, the council did the responsible thing. They called in the experts, and the physicians gave a diagnosis that was very confident and very, very wrong. Their verdict? Hot blood. Overheated blood in the brain. Because if the problem is overheated blood that needs to burn off, then the cure is obvious, isn't it? Let them dance. Get it out of their system. And so the city of Strasbourg looked at people dying in the streets from dancing and prescribed more dancing. They cleared the guild halls. They cleared the grain market. They built, and I want to be clear this is real, a wooden stage for the dancing plague that was killing people. And then, to really commit, they hired musicians, pipers, drummers, and professional dancers, paid to keep the sick ones moving. The city's official plan was, essentially, a rave, to cure a rave. Now think about who's living in that city. Starving, terrified, utterly convinced St. Vitus can strike anyone at any moment. And what do they now hear echoing through the streets? Drums. The outbreak didn't calm down. It exploded. This is where the numbers climbed toward 400. And people started to die. Not poetically. Their bodies gave out. Strokes, heart failure, people who'd danced for days simply dropping. One later chronicle throws out a number historians still argue about, that at the peak it was killing up to 15 people a day. We can't verify that, but the records agree on the ugly core of it. Dancers died. And somewhere in those weeks, the council finally clocked it. The thing they built to fix the problem was the problem. Whoops, doesn't really cover it. So they slammed it into reverse. Music, banned. Stages, torn down. Dancing, outlawed. With one gloriously specific exception. You could still dance at weddings, as long as there were no drums. They had learned exactly one lesson, and it was no drums. With medicine officially defeated, the city went back to Plan A, the supernatural. They loaded the remaining dancers into wagons and hauled them out of Strasbourg. Destination? A shrine to Saint Vitus, up in the hills near a town called Saverne. The logic was clean. If the saint sent the curse, only the saint can lift it. At the shrine, the dancers got little crosses and red shoes, red for the saint, and were walked through a ritual around his image. And here's the genuinely annoying part of this story. It seems to have worked. In the weeks after, the dancing faded out. By early September 1518, about 2 months after Frau Troffea's first steps, it was over. And we know all this because they wrote it down. Physicians' notes, sermons, the council's own records. This is not a campfire legend. It's a paper trail. Which leaves the only question worth asking. What actually happened here? Suspect number 1, and the internet's favorite, poison. Specifically ergot, a fungus that grows on damp rye. Ergot has compounds chemically related to LSD. Eat bread made from infected rye, and you get convulsions, burning skin, hallucinations. So, case closed, right? Medieval people accidentally microdosed a city? Not quite, because ergot doesn't make you dance. It chokes off blood flow and locks your limbs up in agony. You can barely walk. You are not doing a coordinated 6-day cardio session. Most historians look at the ergot theory, nod politely, and put it back on the shelf. Suspect number 2, they wanted to. A secret cult, a weird sect dancing in ecstasy. It dies fast, because the dancers weren't blissed-out worshippers. They were suffering, begging for help, screaming to be let out of their own bodies. Nobody in that square wanted to be there. Which brings us to suspect number 3, the one most historians actually bet on. It was laid out in detail by a historian named John Waller, and it's got the least satisfying name imaginable: mass psychogenic illness. Here's the real version. When a group is under crushing stress, that stress can convert into genuine involuntary physical symptoms, real shaking, real collapse, and it can spread through a crowd by nothing but belief. Now, put the ingredients back together. A population starving, sick, and terrified, and one specific vivid belief everyone already holds: anger Saint Vitus, and you will dance. You couldn't design a better trigger if you tried. Under enough fear, the mind can slip into a trance, where it dissociates, and the body acts out the exact thing the person dreads most. And everybody in Strasbourg knew precisely what the curse was supposed to look like. So that's what their bodies performed. On cue. And this finally explains the stupid part, why the cure made it worse. Stages, drums, public dancing, every one of those was an announcement blasted across the city. The curse is real, and it's spreading. To a terrified, suggestible mind, that's not treatment. That's an invitation with directions. It also explains why 1518 wasn't a one-off. Researchers have logged dancing outbreaks across Europe over centuries, clustered right where the St. Vitus belief was strongest. The curse only worked where people believed in it. Funny how that goes. And before you file this under medieval people were gullible, it still happens. In 1962, in what's now Tanzania, a laughter epidemic broke out among schoolgirls and spread from village to village for months. This isn't a superstition problem, it's a human brain problem. You have the same brain. So the dancing plague probably wasn't a poison, and it wasn't a cult. It was an entire city having a nervous breakdown at the same time. Fear turned into motion. And honestly, that's the scariest answer on the list. A fungus you can avoid, a cult you can outlaw, but a belief moving through a frightened crowd? There's no shrine for that. It spreads faster than any disease we've got. You can still stand where this happened. The streets are right there. People wander through, take photos, grab lunch, right on top of one of the strangest things a human crowd has ever done. And it's easy to file the dancing plague under weird old fact, but it's really a story about what a mind under enough pressure can do to a body, yours included. Every one of those 400 dancers was a regular person, hungry, scared, surrounded by other people who were also hungry and scared. That's all it took. One woman stepping into the street. And here's the detail that won't leave me alone. We never find out why she started. Frau Troffea left no explanation. Whatever kicked off the deadliest dance in history walked out a door one July morning and took its reason to the grave. Some mysteries get solved. This one just gets explained. And those are not the same thing. So here's the real question. If you'd been in Strasbourg that summer, hungry, frightened, hearing the drums start up, are you sure you'd have just watched? You'd like to think so. Everybody in that crowd would have thought so too. If that question bothers you a little, good. That's the fun part. Subscribe and stick around. The next one's already waiting, because the strangest stories in history almost always start the exact same way. One ordinary person doing one thing that nobody has ever been able to explain. See you in the next one.